Hello, hello, hello. My friends, how are you? It's good to see you. Let me see, where are we? What are we doing? What are we doing? I am in Singapore, which is pretty dope, pretty amazing. And can I change my camera? FaceTime. No, I can't. Oh, that's a bummer. I wanted to do the thing where, well, maybe I can show you. Hold on, let me try this. Okay, hold on. I am in. Isn't that crazy? Look at that ridiculous view. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, that. Can you see the boats back there? Wow, it's nice. That's so Singapore. That's the Gardens by the Bay, right? If it looks like Avatar, basically, like the jungles from Avatar, yeah. And it costs almost as much to make too. It's like $1 billion garden. So crazy, beautiful area. Okay. So anyway, yeah, my friends, I don't have a set agenda here. I'm just gonna write some code. It's my own fault. Okay, I did this to myself. I have a pipeline that I use to publish my podcast every week. Okay, and I've been neglecting some upkeep, some maintenance, and at this point, there's just a lot of things I wanted to do, and so I'm not going to rewrite the whole thing, but parts of it I need to rewrite, and other parts I need to change, and there's just a bunch of things that are sort of in the hopper that I'd just like to address. And I wasn't gonna work on it, but then I had a 16-hour flight in economy from San Francisco to Singapore, and I'm like, yeah, I have a lot of free time. I might as well start working on this stuff. And so anyway, I'm here in Singapore, which is great. You should come if you can. But I'm actually here for Spring 1. And ooh, yeah, I'm here for Spring 1. Yeah, and so we actually have a Spring 1 in Singapore, which is cool. But it's fine. It's fine. So we're gonna write some code. Is my point. And I don't know. Just I'm happy to answer questions. Happy to hang out. And maybe you could help me, like, yeah. Okay. Let me do this. So actually, I'll put this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this I'll put our conversation on the iPad, and then I'll code on my laptop. That way, I have two screens and I can see things without having to constantly switch back to the to the laptop. How about that, huh? And let's see here. Okay. So, StreamYard. Sorry, friends. You know what? I've got like several issues of like resetting to do. So first of all, I finally got a new iPhone. Mine. I didn't get. I'm like the rule is in my family, the adults get new phones every 2 years, and the kid gets one every 3 years, right? So she got the 2014, and then her mom and I have been suffering on the morbidly uncool iPhone 13. Uh, it's fine. It's a great phone. The 13 is fine, but we finally got to. I was, but for the USB-C, I would have sat this one out. There's nothing compelling about this new phone. It's a little bit lighter, but the only thing I want, really, just my OCD, my obsessive compulsive sort of nature. The only thing I really want is one cable, and so I got the new phone, and I got a new AirPods Pro set, like the headsets. And then I can finally be done with Thunderbolt and just move to a USB-C life, Okay, let's see. So I've got Gmail. So I did anyway. The point is, there are devices that I need to like sign into that are just brand new. I actually just got them. Okay. Okay, logging in. Come on, computer, do the thing. Okay. Okay, looks like I'm in. It's a funny story. I'm going to be on the road. I'm going from here to Belgium, Devox Belgium, right in Antwerp, and I hope to see you there, of course. And then I'm going to Amsterdam for Spring One Tour. I think it's in Amsterdam, right? And I'm going to be in Switzerland for a few things, and I'll just be about. So I'm not going home anytime soon, right? It'll be the better part of the month before I get to go home. And so I ordered the new iPhone, hoping to get it before I got on that flight for Singapore, and it didn't. It arrived. I swear, it arrived 1 hour at my home. 1 hour after I had gotten to the airport and already checked in for the flight to Singapore, and so I missed the chance. And so my partner was nice enough to reach out to a colleague who lives in San Francisco, who's also headed for Singapore for the same reason as I, and give her the iPhone and the all my new toys, so I could try it out when I'm on the road. Super first world problem. Don't get me wrong. But I was like, oh, I just wanted to have my toy. I can't sleep in my own bed, and I have to deal with screaming, crying babies, and on long, 12 to 15-hour plane rides for the next month. But my camera's not terrible anymore. Okay, friends, let's see. We're gonna share my screen here. Let me make sure I have nothing like sensitive. Boot in the boot. Okay, here's that. All right. All right, let's do this. Let's go. So, the story so far, just to catch you up, I have this pipeline. It's called the Beautiful Podcast. I have a podcast, right? You might have heard about it. It's called the Beautiful Podcast. It's available wherever fine podcasts are available. And basically, I publish it every week, and I'm like Terrence Parr. Terrence Parr, he's the fellow who created Antler. Antler is if you've ever took like compiler courses in college, you probably know Yak and Bison or whatever. Well, in the Java ecosystem, there's something called Antler, ANTLR, and if you've ever used Hibernate, you're using Antler. If you used a million different things, you're using Antler, right? And And by the way, interestingly, if you're using the Spring expression language, you're not using Antler. And it's not like we didn't try. We have this mad scientist named Andy Clement on the Spring team, just an amazing, 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 amazing human being and engineer, and super smart and kind and all that. And yeah, so he wrote the original like prototype for Spring expression language back in 2009, right before Spring Framework 3. And yeah, he was like, okay, this is good, but we can do better. So he improved it, and he rewrote it by hand using a recursive descent parser. Right, he wrote his own recursive descent parser, and that's what eventually shipped. And he's the same amazing human being that would later write code to compile your Spring expression language expressions into bytecode, so that they actually translate into method calls. Right, so when you start up the program, for frequently accessed expression statements, Spring expression language statements, we turn it into bytecode in certain contexts. Like for example, in Spring integration, when you're doing message routing, for example, in the hot path of your application. So yeah, I mean, he's just an amazing, next level kind of person. But anyway, Terrence Parr, they asked him, like, why did you write Antler, which is a parser generator? It's a grammar parser generator. You write things in Bacchus Noir form, BNF, and then that'll generate the Java code for parsing something, whatever, SQL, CSV, whatever you want, right? You can write your own parser. And they asked him, like, why did you build this framework for automating the creation of parsers? And his answer was something along the lines of, like, I spent 5 years automating what I could have written by hand in 5 minutes, right? And that's sort of how I feel about things. Like, if I've got a podcast, even though it would only take a few hours every week, I'd much rather it just took half an hour, not including the interviews, the actual discussion, but the actual production, the getting it out the door thing, automate that, so I don't have to. I wanted to just go right every week, and without any hitches. And sometimes it doesn't go right. Sometimes I screw up, but that's not for lack of automation. It's just because at some points I have built-in failure into my process, and they bit me, So anyway, here's all that. I'm working on version 3. I want to move this forward a little bit, right? I've got a whole bunch of components here. There's actually a console that you can log into, but right now the console has a bespoke username and password system, right? And well, if you've seen my recent live streams, then I love the Spring authorization server. So I want to move that. I want to move to that, right? And also, I have a pipeline, and that whole pipeline is a bunch of event-driven Spring integration things using RabbitMQ. And at one point, there's even a handoff via RabbitMQ and S3, Amazon S3, to a bucket up there, where we upload, the actual audio files that are going to get put together, and then that gets pulled down by a Python process, which does audio muxing. And so that whole integration, the whole pipeline, I'd like that to be a lot cleaner. I want to simplify that if I can. And then also want to add more to the pipeline. Like, it'd be great if I could automatically publish the blog as a consequence of automatically publishing the pipeline. Like right now, everything except for the blog and the tweet gets done. I'd like to automate those last 2 things as well. And what else? I think that's, I'd like to be able to handle more formats. Like, right now it's sort of, I have to upload an MP3 and a JPEG. That's it. I can't do a .wave, can't do a PNG. So it'd be nice if I had some way to normalize these formats, so that no matter what you put in, or within reason, of course, but whatever you put in, it normalizes the files such that it would still work, right? And right now that just isn't the case. And the historical reason for that is because the tools require, I'm not going to do the audio and image conversion in Java. I'll just shell out. I can use FFmpeg or convert or whatever. But the tools required to do that in turn use RAM, and it turns out the RAM can get pretty expensive. So I've always just I didn't want to like try and run those tools on a server that wouldn't have that much RAM available. So now I can. Now I'm running it. Everything has been moved to Kubernetes years ago, right? And so now I can allocate as much RAM as I want. Who cares? So I might as well solve that problem as well. Cool. So there you go. That's that. And then the other constraint is that I've only got like a couple hours. So we got to hurry. I got a meeting in like 2 hours. Okay, so here's where we are, right? So I've done some of the work. Let me see here. Close this. 127.0.0.80.82. JLong, PW, that's my local thing, right? I've got a Spring authorization server running on my local machine here. You can see that here. Auth application, pretty similar to the stuff we've seen before. Just as I'm not going to use this in production, obviously. This is just a stub authorization server that I can use just to develop, right? I'm not going to actually log into my production auth server each time. It would, first of all, it would be harder on a plane with no Wi-Fi to do that. And then second of all, this is faster to reset and make changes to if I need to. So I've got one simple user, JLong, password PW. This is not the real username and password for the real system, but it's what I'm using to develop. I've got the gateway, which is acting as an OAuth client, and same pattern as we've seen before. The gateway client, the OAuth client, is acting as a proxy. So requests come in to the gateway running on port 8082. The requests come into the gateway. If there's no token, it gets redirected to the OAuth server, which then redirects back. Now there's a token. And then the request gets resolved, and that gets resolved one of two ways. If you're going to gateway/API, we send the request after we rewrite the segment. We send the request onward to the API, the backend API. Otherwise, if you're just going to / something else and it's not / API, then we send it to the Vue.js JavaScript app. Okay. So what you see here is I've got now this JavaScript app, and I'm slowly rebuilding it. You can see I managed to get JLong to show up again. So I've ripped out the old user system. I'm now doing delegated authentication using the Spring authorization server, but there's no podcasts. There's nothing. I got to like get my data back, right? So let's see what's happening. Do I have any data in the local database? That's the other thing I should check. So PG, so CD desktop, beautiful podcast. Okay. Sample data. Okay. Yeah, there we go. It's there. So now how do I load DB? Okay, let's try this. So I'm going to load, well, first of all, do we have the database? So PG password equals Postgres, U Postgres, H localhost, Postgres, SQL. Do I have, okay, I got the schema. That's nice. Nothing in there. I must have reset the database recently. Okay, so we're just going to do this. And now log in here, select all from podcast. Good, there's something. So if I go there, what does that show me? Refresh, nothing. Okay, so there's no, so the data is there, but my endpoint, my web app is not seeing it just yet. So I guess the first order of business is figuring out what page is it, what endpoint is it looking at? And I guess that's, what is that? I guess it's probably the search, right? Isn't that the search? I've got yeah, this looks like the search. So the search right now, I think I just stubbed everything out to get rid of the, I wanted to get the JavaScript code compiling again, transpiling. So what does this thing do? Yeah, there it is. So there's no podcasts, okay, at the moment. So what happens if I do that? That's the default case. Oh, okay. So it's still working, kinda. The problem, of course, is we don't have this data, the text of the data, and we don't have the images. Why is that? So we go here, refresh. Okay. 247. Is that right? Do I have 247 podcast episodes already out there? Okay, so where is the data for the search? And also, I wonder if this works. Does this work? So if I go here and I do Sharat. Okay. 44 not found. So the search endpoint isn't working yet. Okay. So I'm rebuilding the endpoint. I'm rebuilding the API. So first of all, so that I have like the other thing I wanted to do is to get rid of Hibernate, right? So I'm ripping out Hibernate because my domain is just so simple. It doesn't need that bloat and complexity for for what is a simple task. Also, while I have the chance, I'm upgrading to Java 21, Spring Boot 3.2, all that good stuff too, because it's free performance. I'll use GraalVM. So there's a fair bit of like code I had to go through here for GraalVM. I'm trying to do a good job of like adding a feature, making sure it works with GraalVM, adding a feature, like I don't want to get to a point where I've built the whole thing again, but I haven't tested any of it with GraalVM because then I'll just be here forever. On the other hand, it is kind of fun writing code, and it's not very fun sitting there debugging GraalVM hints and all that stuff. So who knows? Let me see. API configuration. So for example, I just use the AWS SDK for S3, and there's a few types I had to add, right? This is all the GraalVM hints that I had to read, runtime hints registrar for Amazon. Let me just rename that Amazon AWS S3. There you go. That's more specific. Okay. So these types I have to register a proxy. These types are all, I just need reflection hints for them. And these are the resources that are getting loaded, and it was painful. It took me a couple hours just adding a hint, redoing the compile, starting it up again, adding another hint, redoing the compile, starting it up again, etc. Okay, so that all that is pretty straightforward. I hope you're on the same page as I am, because there's a lot of stuff here. So okay, we move that. Now let's go back to the actual proper application. We want to update the code. Like I said, I'm moving to JDBC. I got rid of Hibernate, but as a result, I have to rebuild stuff. So what am I missing? Pipeline controller, probably not that. That's empty. Podcast controller. Yeah, search. So right now I'm not doing it. You can see there's no search here, right? So I need to do a search. I'm going to look at how the old thing worked, and we're just going to like do that, I guess. So desktop, beautiful podcast. Now we want code. And we'll just do that. Show processor. Okay, what is this? Here's the old one. It's not completely brand new. I'm not starting from scratch, right? I'm taking the old code and I gutted it. I'm changing it, but it's still very much the same thing. Okay, so in the old one, I'm using Lucene. Oh, that's good to know. So that means I need to bring Lucene back. And the other thing, right now, heresy, sacrilege, but it is true. I am using Maven, just because that seems to do a better job with Java 21. And as soon as, my understanding is that by end of October, Gradle, because my understanding is that Gradle is maybe, I think it's like waiting for Kotlin to support Java 21 or something like that, right? So once that is supported, then I guess they're going to upgrade Gradle to support Java 21. And once Gradle supports Java 21, I'll then just convert my build back to Gradle. I much prefer Gradle, but at the moment I'm actually using Maven. Okay, the old one was using Maven. I converted the new one to Gradle. Then I realized it's just it's just very painful. Okay. So Maven public. Please be public. No. Wait, so does that mean it's not public? Okay, so Maven repository. Here's another problem I'm having, which is I don't know what I published. Like I'm trying to go through and just make as much stuff as I can on Maven Central. Lucene Spring Boot Starter. Okay. Okay, so this should be. That's the old one. So that's good. This is a chance to move off the old dependencies. Okay, move to the new stuff. Okay. Okay, so did that break my code? I don't have any code, so I don't know if I could break it. I mean, it's just the same old code as before, right? Okay, so now what? So we want the search controller, and does that work? If I just copy and paste that, will I beat it? I don't know. Who knows? Where's my podcast controller search? Oh dear. Okay. And why doesn't this thing import? Okay, wait. So does that type Lucene? So Maven didn't download it? Is that what I'm trying to understand? Okay. Oh, no. I don't want the palm. Oh, it's the root. Okay, wait. I published it. There's a dependency there, so that's not the right one. Okay, so what is the root? Maybe. Oh. Oh, wait. That's from. Yeah. Okay. There it is. It exists. Wait. Root. Yeah. That's the right one. So that's the new one. That. Oh, the root has all the other stuff. Okay, so the root has, Lucene and all that other stuff that I need to be able to build this. Okay, so now if I go back here, are you happy? You seem happy. Hello, Simon, Gradle 84. Yeah, I'm, like I said, I don't want to just, if I have to lift a finger to do it, I don't want to do it. Right now, I just want my build tool to get the heck out of the way. I'll wait until it's like smooth as butter and I'll just restore it. Let me see. Okay, so a couple things. So I need clearly a constructor, but I also need a logger. I'm not using Lumbach anymore. I just get rid of that. Not that there's any reason not to. It's just it didn't work particularly well with Gradle, and trying to get rid of it because I don't care enough about it to go down a rabbit hole with Gradle. Okay, add constructor parameters. Okay, so there's this, there's that. So get rid of that. And now I'm going to call this test mapping podcasts. Rid of this. Yeah, I'm not going to add Lumbach. Like I said, I saw the issue, and where I'm using it, I upgraded it. But since I'm rebuilding this, I figured I'll just get rid of it. Why not? Less is more sometimes. Okay, logger.info. Logger. Okay. Okay, so that's one thing that is problematic here is I should call this the search controller. Okay. Actually, search. Simplify that. And will that work? Why would that work? I feel like that's not going to work. That won't work. You can't have two endpoints mapped to the same thing. So what I need to do is to say, I need to say if there's a parameter, and I could do the say do one. Okay, first of all, what is this? Create that method, please. Thank you. And the IDs that match will be, that'll have been a collection, right? So object collection. There you go. Okay. And the podcast. Oh no, it's a list of podcasts given a list of IDs. What am I missing then? So filter podcast. Oh, the other thing is because I'm not using Hibernate, I got to move to these nice records. Oh, that's the wrong podcast. Oh, I don't have a. I don't think I rebuilt too much of that domain model, did I? Yeah, there it is. That's the domain model. So why? What's the issue? ID. Did I not add a UID to this? I did. Okay, so let's just add that back. So string e, and I read that. I have a service somewhere, surely. Podcast service, maybe. Okay. Here we go. ID UID and add that in here to E. All right, good. So there's the upgraded row mapper. Hello, everybody. Hi. Okay, so search controller IDs that match UID. Okay, and now what? So I need to actually re-implement. Well, I need to have the optional. I need to work on the optional. So here I'll say, okay, query dot if present. As simple as can be. Service.podcast, just return everything. Otherwise, do this longer, more involved thing. So what I'm going to do there is I'll route the request to Lucene, which will do the search and give us back a bunch of IDs. Then I'll use those IDs to actually load the objects from the collection of podcasts. And as an optimization, since I only add one new podcast every week, and since there's only like I said, less than 300 so far, I'm just keeping them in memory. I mean, this is not like a scary thing to do at all. So I store them in the database, but I load them into memory, and I evict them whenever there's a new podcast, and I just reload. But it's once or twice a week, right? Who cares? And so as a result, what I'm doing is I'm doing a search against Lucene. We have to implement that. And then I'm going through all the podcasts, which by this point should be loaded, but I don't think I have that code anymore. So let's talk about that. Where is that code being done? Here, there's an event that gets published. And in that refresh event, we are storing or caching the data. So do I have this data here? Do I have the event? Excuse me. Okay, event listener. So I guess the final thing here is the podcast published to a Podbean event. So I guess we'll start to rebuild the events that get published. And one of them we have is here. Okay. Record. Who cares? Just instant. Actually, I don't even care. I just need that event. Good. So it's public. And then we have a start index invalidated event. Search index. Okay, so public record. And so now when something in the pipeline publishes those events, or when the application starts up, we will refresh the index. That will call this method. And this method in turn, what does it do? It's going to get all the podcasts, right? Podcast from the, we have a repository here. Service. And there. So for each one of those, I'm going to add them to the local collection here. So UID, title. Oh, so satisfying. And then here's the bit where we actually have to do the Lucene indexing. So we're going to re-index everything in Lucene every time we've loaded the new podcast. So term ID, document right mapper, build a podcast document. What does that code look like? That's right here. Okay, so we have this method here. I built this library years ago, right? Because I wasn't gonna. I mean, I should. The logically the most elegant thing, given infinite money and infinite server capacity and all that, would be to stand up a full Elasticsearch cluster and blah blah blah. But again, less than 300 records. Not. I'm not gonna do that, right? It makes no sense. So, there's only one instance. I don't care. So, podcast view. What do I need to view? Just give me the real thing. Okay. ID. Title. Oh, there's no. What's the HTML description? Okay, we should come back to that. What is this? HTML description. I don't have that field. I don't even know what it does, but we also need that method. So that's why we have JSoup. JSoup is a way to parse HTML in Java. It's like a beautiful soup from Python, but from Java. And apparently I'm using it. I did not remember that. So what do I do with it? Let's figure that out. What I do is I call JSoup that parse, and I turn it. Okay, so how do I get this HTML description? What was that podcast view thing doing for me? Oh. No, wait. Actually, I don't know what that does. So do I just have an HTML description? Is that in my database? I do. Look at that. Oh, I don't. Wait. Did I in the old one? I mean, that's interesting. What was the data there? What was I storing there? Who updated it? Who created it? Okay, so how do I even confirm? I guess I go over here. Podcast Java. I don't have the HTML description in here either. So I get the feeling that that view thing, what is that? What is the so it came from podcast view. That's where it was loading the HTML description. Do I have that? HTML description. There it is. Yeah. So where does this get created? It extends podcast, but it's got an extra field for HTML description. Pinning issues. You mean like with virtual threads? That's good to know. I hope not. I did not know. Yeah, and if there are, it's like I said, given that this event only happens once a month or once a week, like 4 times or 5 times a month, then I won't be so sad. Well, good to see you joining me as I'm working. I appreciate that, LinkedIn user. Okay, so wait, who's creating this podcast view? That's the real question. Okay, so podcast view, markdown service, get the description. That's what it is. Okay, so there's a markdown service somewhere. Okay. And am I doing that? Is that what I'm doing? Is that why I have a what? You can't hear me? Wait, Shema. Can you all hear me? Hmm? Okay. Okay. Somebody can hear me. Okay, good. Nice to meet you, Harrison. Okay, so what am I going to do? So what I'm going to do is I have to compute this type dynamically. That's why I had the podcast view type. Now I get it. So I don't want to I don't want that to be as front and center as it was before. I don't think it really needs its own service. So what if I just created this like podcast view, and I'll have the podcast, but then I'll have the HTML as well. What about that? Okay, so that way I can just pass in a podcast view, and I just do podcast.podcast. Okay. Podcast.podcast. HTML. Okay, so that's a bit cleaner. And then what do I have here? I have a podcast view. So I have to create the podcast view like this. So our view equals new podcast view podcast. Then I use the markdown service, which I don't have injected. I'm not even sure if I even have it on the class path. Markdown service. Okay, I do not have that in the class path. So pom.xml. Yes, this one. I think this is also in Maven Central. I can check that out. Okay. Josh Long. Okay. Templates. Yay. Okay, so this is there. So I'm going to bring that in now. That's another thing I'm trying to do, is to get off of my Artifactory. Like, basically, if I've done my job right, all the bits that I need to build this thing again are all public now. Shouldn't be private stuff. Okay. Reload that from Maven Central. Yay. Okay. So now if I go back to this, does this thing resolve? Yes. Okay. Markdown. Okay, we'll add that to the constructor. Here's my constructor. It's around here somewhere. Okay, so markdown service. This dot markdown service. 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 Podcast service. Voila. Okay. Okay. So this thing is just a convenience for working with Markdown, because I compose the descriptions and all that stuff for the podcast in Markdown, but somewhere I've got to convert it. And so, you know, So here's the podcast view. Markdown service convert to markdown. And then it's the podcast.description. Surely. Okay, so there's this. And then build the view. Podcast view. Doc. Okay. I think I like it. I mean, the compiler seems happy. That's a start, right? It's got to be better than nothing. How do we test? Well, we don't. Well, actually, I didn't do the search. We still haven't done the actual thing where we search for results and get them. So all that was just established that we could get to the point where we could now begin to address the bug that I was trying to get to in the first place, which is my search engine doesn't work. So did I write that code? Search index. Okay, search index. Yay. Okay, seemed happy. Now, do I need that? What is the issue? Okay, query to be trains q. Query equals q dot get. Okay, so now what are we doing? So let's, if we trace our steps, we have a query. If we don't have a query, just return everything. That's this. If we do, then we get the query. I don't know. I don't think it's possible to get a null here, but just in case, the query must not be. No, it is possible because that could be nullable, right? Okay. Is there a limit on how many parameters we can have for constructor injection? I certainly haven't hit it. Yeah, if there is, it's very, very high. I've had, I've done terrible things with constructor injection. It's better than field injection, by the way. Remember, every time you do field injection, a unit test dies. So do a search, optional query, search index, great. Go to the method there. What is that doing? It's talking to Lucene. Lucene will have new fresh data because, of course, we'll have called this method, which puts stuff in the index when the application starts up. We're using the Lucene template from my project there. Do I have any properties related to setting up Lucene that I need to worry about in the auto config? Who knows? Default, nope. Application of properties, hello. Lucene, this one, okay. So we need to put that. Okay. So what does that buy me? This is the directory where we intend to. So what is that folder actually? What is this? It's referencing another folder. That's where the pipeline does all the processing. It's the staging area for all the stuff. So I'll just put that in a separate variable. Okay, so relative to that common folder in which all the temporary files and stuff are dumped when we're doing the processing and all that. Relative to that, we have another folder called auto Lucene index. And okay. I kind of I just want to try it out now. So go back here, reload. Okay. .404 podcasts. Really? I feel like that should have worked. Eesh. No static resource podcasts. No static resource podcasts. .404. Let's go to the JavaScript. Wait, so this is podcasts. Oh, okay, the JavaScript is looking for podcasts, not API podcasts search. So do I need another endpoint? Let's see. We've got I need a podcast endpoint, don't I? Do I have a podcast controller? No, I changed it, didn't I? So do podcasts controller. Okay, response body, request. There's a case that this should be all the same controller, but okay, for now, let's just roll with it. Final podcasts service. Okay. Option cast. Good. So it restarted. It indexed everything, so it's in this. It's in the Lucene repository now. But now what? API podcasts. Hey, that worked. Okay. So now it is maybe not. Remember, I changed the domain, so I'm using records now, and because I'm using SQL, I have the ability to create as complex a relationship as I want. I'm not limited to the sort of grunt, basics of Hibernate and its limitations in modeling. So I guess the JavaScript isn't working because it doesn't know what the types look like. So let's go over here. Podcasts, API podcasts. Okay. And head over there for reference, and let's just see if we can't make this one a little bit better. And the search episode. Okay, so we get all these podcasts. They get assigned to this variable called podcasts. And in the view code, we're iterating over the podcasts one by one. So for each podcast in this collection called podcast, for each podcast in the collection called podcast, with this key that we get from the UID, which I assume we still have. Yeah, we do. We have a UID there. Okay. Then we have this episode component, and that in turn, it's going to be, it's in the template, I reckon. HTML descript. Okay, so we have, are we getting podcast or podcast views? That's the other question, isn't it? What this thing is expecting is podcast views. Huh. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. Alina is a legend. I'm so excited. We're gonna be at Devox Belgium. We're doing a I think it's a workshop, right? 3 hours or something on GraalVM and Spring Boot and all that good stuff. Okay, so what have I done? I need to return. Is that right? Do I have to return the views of the data? That's a bummer. I should convert this whole thing to GraphQL. Oh, will I be using GraalVM 21 CE already? You better believe it. Like, I'm already doing it now, right? So if I do Java version, there you go, 21, native image version, Java 21. Yeah, I'm already Java list, or sorry, default SDK default Java. Okay, list Java. Yeah, here we go. I'm already using it. There you go. See? Default. I'm not just using it. I'm defaulting to it. If things don't work there, then I change them until they do. Okay, so the issue is I've got this new concept of a view, and my So I'm starting to understand why I had this issue before. So that is tedious. That means that if I want to have, that's why the original code had a subclass of podcast called podcast view, which turned out quite nice. But that means that now every property is now one level deeper. I've got other integrations that use that endpoint, I reckon. So, for example, if I go to FM, that in turn is using the feed there, right? So if I break this here, I'm going to break it for them, for that code over there. But that's future Josh's problem. This is fine. He'll understand, right? Right. So that means I've got to okay. I'd rather just fix that than to have, than to not be able to use records. I'd rather have my records than not. Oh, famous last words though. Okay, well that also means that I've got this thing called podcast view buried inside the search controller. So either, is this going to be tedious? It sounds like it's going to be tedious. So what did I do on the other one? I guess I must have, that explains why I had this podcast view service. I centralized it because I'm reusing it elsewhere. Here's the old podcast view. It extends podcast, but it's got this extra field called HTML description, which is computed live dynamically. I don't reify it or store it in the database. So now what? So the podcast controller podcast search. Do I have a site podcasts? That's this. Oh, actually, no. This might be the endpoint that those other services are relying upon. In which case, I'll have to rebuild it, but there is a break between how I represent it internally versus how the world consumes it. That's good. And this is JSON, it looks like. What am I using? It's just an atomic reference? Yeah, it's just an atomic reference to the string. So it looks like that same event that we had earlier, I'm also reusing that to rebuild this JSON string, and that's what gets served up. So that's like a one-time operation. It's write once, read many, which is good. So what does this endpoint use in JavaScript though? So if I go to the search episode and I go down to here, get podcasts, what is that using? It's using main store, get podcasts, podcast API. Oh yeah, this is podcast API. So this is what? This is equivalent to what? Find usages. It's root URL plus podcasts. Okay. So there is supposed to be an endpoint called podcasts. Oh boy. Okay, let's see. If I go back here, search, and move that down. And then podcast view. Wait. Search. And the endpoint here. It just returns collection of podcast views. Huh. Wait a minute. What am I supposed to do then? Like if I get that event, wouldn't I rather re-index and recompute the markdown whenever things are changed? I think I should promote podcast view to more of a top level type. And then that way, when I do the re-indexing, so where's the podcast service? No, where's the search? Search controller. Yeah, me too. Shiloh. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm glad you're as confused as I am. At least I don't feel so bad. Where did I put? Okay, okay. So what I'm trying to say is I had this thing called podcast. I thought that was the top level type. Turns out I need this thing called podcast view, which has HTML. I've also got a search index, and I'm doing the indexing where? I guess it's here. Is that right? Yeah, it's here. I'm doing the indexing here. And what happens when I'm done indexing? I don't know. Do I publish an event somewhere? Surely. Search index. That's the search. Here's the document. Who's using this? Let's find that. Refresh. That's this right here. So I'm writing it to this. Okay. But then where do I publish the event? Is there an event being published? Like, that seemed useful to me to have that event. So new podcast. I don't want this to be like the state of the world though either. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to be able to reuse this. Like this podcast view, I'd like to be able to publish that somewhere and then store it so I don't have to recompute it or load it from database each time. And right now it's only being used in the search controller, but ideally I'd have some sort of event that publishes that, out. Okay, so what does that look like then? So this event gets published. I call the refresh method when the application starts up. Can I have another event called search index updated or something like that? Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. What do you say? Let's do that. So let's say we have an event record search index updated event. And we want to pass in a collection of podcast views. Okay. So I don't have to recompute those. And now that means we've got to start. Interestingly, this is exactly what we shouldn't be doing for Project Loom either. Right here. Because I'm doing a synchronize. Is that what you're talking about there earlier, Simon? With the pinning? That could be an issue. Yeah, I'm actually pinning it. But again, the reason I'm pinning it is because I'm only doing it once. So it's probably fine. Okay, let's just get rid of that synchronization block. Let me get rid of that. That's satisfying. I'm happy with what I just did there. Okay, so still though, I need to publish that event, which means I need to accrue the record. So this podcast's right here. That's not this. We want to get rid of that for now. No, not that. We want to update it. Okay, so we'll have podcast views. And yeah, let's just do that. There we go. That's actually not bad. Okay. Podcast P. Good. Okay, so now I've got that. So for each podcast, how do you know? I want this dot podcasts values. Each one of those views podcast. Okay. So there you go. And when I'm done with that, this. So I've got this global variable. Maybe I don't want to, maybe I know this is going to seem a little ridiculous, but it's cleaner in my mind. Not much, but a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'll localize this variable, aggregate, whatever, collection of podcasts equals. So this, and then bar m2. Now I don't need the synchronize block because it's why that for that mutates the list. So I'm not sure. Okay, so and then once I've got the hash map here, okay, and this here. Okay. And I want to publish an event. And so that's what's going to actually set the global variable here. And that way other things in the system can get it as well. So got the query turn out. Okay. So now the event, I need the application event publisher for that. So application event publisher. And here, private final application event publisher. This that publisher. And I scroll down. Why that for that mutates a little? I don't quite understand the question, my friend. What is the question? So out of curiosity, why that for that mutates a list and not a stream map? I don't quite understand. Okay, so did I publish the event? No, I've injected the publisher, and then when I do the indexing, I gotta publish the event, and that's over here. I'll do the indexing. I'll say this dot publisher dot publish event new search index updated event. I'm gonna pass in hm.values. All those values are in the refresh. In the put new object equals. In the refresh, okay, I'm doing put new podcast view. Yeah, 84 to 88 right here. So what's the question? Why doing a for loop? Why am I doing the for loop instead? Is that the question? Okay, I'm not sure. So now I've got the values. For each one of the values, I write it out to the thing. Once I'm done with that, I do the search index has been updated. And the first consumer is actually going to be, yes, you guessed it, me. I'm going to listen to that event. So I'll just void updated search. Okay, and then we can say finally this dot podcasts equals clear. So I'll do synchronized this dot podcast, this dot podcast dot clear, this dot podcasts dot put all event dot podcast views. Podcast variable is right there. What's wrong? Map. Oh, right. Okay, UID. Okay. So this dot podcasts dot put UID PV. Wrong. Feels wrong. What's wrong with that? Podcast put. Here's the event podcast views, which is a collection. Oh, collection. So there is no such thing as UID. So it's going to be pv.podcast.uid. And I guess you would say, why am I doing the for loop? And you're right. Okay, so now, what about that? Let's just rework that. So podcasts.for each e. And you're right. Okay, good. Okay, it's a bit nicer. I agree. Values is an no. I want it down here. It's very important. Okay, so for each of the podcasts, actually, do I use this anywhere else? No, I can just inline it and get rid of that little variable. Voila. Okay, so now it's a little bit cleaner still. So for each of the podcasts, write them out to this hash map in the same thread. So I don't need to synchronize anything, and I don't need to use the concurrent hash map, which is very slow to update. To write to, and I'm going to update this local variable called hm, which is computed podcast views or something like that. And then now I've got all the values from this map. Why do I, and actually that's a good point, why do I have a map in the first place? Where do I use it like a map elsewhere except for to dereference the list? Okay, I see what Simon was trying to get me to do earlier. Okay, and then add, get rid of this. That goes away. And that. Ooh, okay. Nice. Okay, so that was a little convoluted, but we worked through it. Thanks, everybody. Okay, HTML, good. Just up podcasts. Okay, so and even there, okay, I get it. I'll do a map. It actually, we don't. Yeah, I guess so. So now what? So we want to turn it into a list, I guess. Computed podcasts. So there you go. So now I'm going to go from podcast service, give me all the podcasts for each one, create a podcast view, store it in a list, and then each item in the list, pass it into the mapper, write it out, and then I can publish an event with those computed views. Okay, good. So now the only variable I have, the state classic, the class variables, still a concurrent hash map indexed by UID and podcast view. There must be a reason for that. Oh, maybe it's for fast lookups later. I don't know. We'll figure it out later. But like, why did I have a map? That's the question I'm sure Simon is asking me. And there must have been a reason. Who knows what it was? So, okay, what about search? Does that still work? So we go through and we say all the values, filter them, find the IDs that match, and collect them. Okay. So search, find the IDs, get the podcast views, and I guess we could just return that. Yeah. Yeah. Lucene is amazing. I love Lucene. That's amazing. Okay, let's restart. Oops. Podcast controller is mapped already. Sure, that's my fault. My bad. Okay. Oops, broke everything. Okay, but we knew that was going to happen. I have to dereference everything now from podcast from podcast to podcast. Oh, yeah. Could I solve this a different way? Could I just flatten them back into the thing that the JavaScript is expecting at the source when I load the data? Why not, right? Like, yeah. Could I do that? Why not, right? Like, I've got this main, I'm only loading the podcasts in two places, and they're both in the same darn place. Where is it? Search. That's the search component. Search episode page. Here we go. So I'm loading it here. I've got this function in main.js. Podcasts. Okay. It's called await search service get podcasts. So when I get the data back, couldn't I flat map everything so like I move the properties up one level? I think I could, right? Let's try it. I'm not proud, but I'll try it. So function. Okay, and then const p equals podcast dot podcast. Then const flattened podcast equals whatever, and flattened podcast dot uid equals podcast view dot uid, and then podcast view dot podcast dot. Is there a better way to do this, or do I just still have to do varlet prop? Does that still work? Oh. Yeah. That work? Who knows? Turn podcast. So so I'm gonna do a map. This is not a. This is a single. This is a list. Can I do? It's just flat map, right? For each, whatever. Flat map in JavaScript. Not a thing. Map. Okay. So p.flatmap p flatten p. That looks real. And results equals that. Turn. Okay. Well, I suppose it could be worse. We're back to that at least. But why is everything else broken? Results. Flattened results. Turn results. Log. Good old. Find you a friend that likes you as much as console.log does. Okay. Yeah. Really? Okay, it did work. It's just the object graph behind the scenes has changed. So even though I flattened it, things are still not where the client expects them to be. So I didn't really buy myself much, and I added complexity. So maybe I should just undo the flattening business here. Let me just comment that out. Like if I still have to change all my HTML to account for new things, I might as well just have the doubly linked thing. I don't need to flat map it. So. Nothing works. That's fine. It's okay. So now we go back to search, which is not the right one. Search service, episode. Okay, so what do I got? This is the top of the page. So podcast.podcast. Search episode page. Search episode page. CSS. Is it episode? Date index. Okay. So it must be the episode page. Date index. Oh, what? Sort podcast by date by most recent first. No, it's not that, but it's actually yes, right? Sort. Okay, that's this. Okay. Now what about the title? So we go to the search, we go to the episode, podcast.podcast.date. Is that not, yeah, that's correct. What about the description? That's correct. Wait, I thought, oh, it's just HTML now, right? Okay. There's HTML. And then we've got, and this is, okay. None of these work. I'm gonna make this, we're aspirationally gonna make it so you can delete stuff. Cool. And then podcast photo URI. Is that not a thing? Wait, what is the data here? Podbean. Nope, wrong one. Podbean. Photo. So it's podbean.photo. Okay, so Podbean. Oh. Okay. What about the title? It's coming together, but we still need the title. So podbean.podcast.podcast. Okay, so the data's back. That's a good place to git commit. Podcast git status. Git commit. Rebuild the search. Okay. All this code is going into a private repo, and I will, because I got everything in one folder, just kind of like easy iteration. But as soon as it's all done, I'll move everything back into the constituent projects. I'll just do a big copy and paste, and I'll have one commit on those individual folders that are open source. And so the idea is that I can, I will be able to put the HTML5 stuff in the studio repository and put the API stuff in the API and put the processor there and create a new repository for the gateway. I also have to sort out the Kubernetes for that. So let's actually talk about what I have to do here. So log publication and delete podcast functionality and authorization server and move to Java 21 and Grout VM. Simplify pipeline code. Use. Okay, so what else do I need? I need to do. What else did we say? Normalize, put files. Okay. What else do we need? Blog publication, podcast functionality, Java 21. Deploy gateway to Kubernetes. Okay, well, yeah. So for now, I think we made some progress here, friends, but still a lot of work to do. Oh yeah, make sure default podcast.fm still works. Okay, I'll put all that in the root of this project here. And do I have a README? No. Echo read. I know. Subble README. E. E3. Okay. Git add README. We've done a little bit today. I need to I'm gonna step away and go get some lunch and prepare for my meeting at 2:30, 14:40 my time. It's now it's 13:45. I suppose we can do a few more minutes, but basically I'm gonna. So what we did today was we reinstalled the search engine. We got rid of dead dependencies that were tied to my Artifactory. We moved to public ones. We reinstalled Lucene and the Markdown conversions. We got the search service working again, the search controller. And I think I like this new search index updated event. So that means that anything else in the system that wants the final view of all the podcasts once it's all been computed, they can just subscribe to that event. And so once a podcast has been published, we'll just publish that event. That'll force the index to everything to be we'll force another event, which will force the index to be recreated, which will then publish this, which will then, I can then serve this data, sending it around to anything that needs it. Let's move these two types out. What do you think about that? These two types should be top level. So, okay. Yep. Has to be. And the podcast view. I don't like the idea of the podcast view being public. And in fact, I don't like the idea of having an events folder. Let's just move everything to the root. Get rid of the events folder. A little bit better. It's a mess, but whatever. I prefer that than arbitrary categorizing packages. Okay. The other thing I want to if I restarted, if I were the next thing I want to work on is the actual creation of a podcast, right? So when you go to here, you enter the basics. I upload a photo, I upload the intro, the interview, and all that stuff. Put in the description. All that, it does some. So I remember I'm doing a pipeline here. So I do some crazy stuff here in the create episode page, where basically it's where is it? Where is that crazy code? I create a zip file in JavaScript, right, in the client memory, and that zip file has the uploaded files that you've uploaded, and then I submit from JavaScript in the form. I submit that JavaScript to the endpoint, and then the endpoint, the backend Spring code, it handles the archive. It creates a zip file with a manifest. Actually, the JavaScript creates a zip file with an XML manifest containing the files for the audio, the image, the interview, etc. And the manifest tells the code on the server side which file is supposed to logically be what. Like if you have a file called foo.mp3, on the back end, there's got to be some way of saying that's the interview, and then this other thing, there's the photo, and this other thing is the intro. And the original idea behind that was that, well, first of all, we don't know what to look for, right? I don't want to have to always remember to name my files intro.mp3. What if it's intro.wave, or what if it's just part one, whatever. So there's that. So the client side does all that XML and zipping and all that stuff. And then it actually base64 encodes it, I think. So I've rebuilt this logic here to read those archives, right? At least I'm pretty sure I have. That'll be the next part, is what happens once you've submitted that form. Well, first of all, you're going to end up in a pipeline, a Spring integration pipeline. The first thing that's going to happen is we're going to unpack that zip file and start like sifting through it and going, okay, this, and this, off you go. And now would be, and right after that would be the right place to introduce the like the normalization, taking the photo, the image, whatever. Like I said before, right now it's a real pain in the butt. If I have a PNG, which is a better format anyway, if somebody gives me a PNG, I have to like go into Photoshop or use a image magic, convert to a JPEG, and then I have to upload that because the system balks if you give it a PNG. And the form right now is designed not to let you upload a PNG, right? But also, there's another issue. If the image that you upload or that I upload is more than a megabyte, I think, or megabyte and a half, that'll actually break the pipeline. And because it's asynchronous and all this, sometimes you don't notice, that the pipeline is having this, it's just not able to proceed. So I want to like make it so that, first of all, we could, if it's going to fail much earlier. And second of all, don't fail. Like, it'd be better if we just ran image magic and guaranteed the image was less than a megabyte, so all that kind of stuff. I think that'll be the next step, is just having normalization. If you upload, like, I don't want to upload a WAV file. If you upload a WAV file for, an hour-long conversation, that could be a gigabyte, that'd be really, really bad, So maybe that isn't something I'm going to support. Or at least I'd have to like stress test that code. I don't know what that looks like. Does my JavaScript code work if it has to create a zip file out of a 1 gigabyte, or is there like a streaming thing I need to start working on? Right now I'm just getting away with it because it's MP3s, but I don't know. I just don't know. All right, my friends, I'm going to go get some lunch. Like I said, this has been fun. I will probably do this again a lot more this week because I want to get this done. I need the existing system is still there. I can get the podcast out on Thursday. I would just like not to have to worry about this again, especially since it's something that's already working. Like, I'm not trying to build it to solve an unsolved problem. It's already been solved. Now I'm just fixing it. I'm just improving it. And satisfying though that is, I don't have a lot of time. So I'd like to get it done pretty quickly. Events. Git push. Do that. I'm also doing a keynote, by the way, with I'm doing a keynote here at Spring One, but I'm also doing a keynote for Axon on Axonic Axon IQ later this week at their big show as well, virtually, albeit, but I'll be doing that as well. So don't miss that. That'll be a lot of fun as well. All right, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.